Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Sixers Wrap-Up Show. My name is Sean Barnard here with my guy Sam Oshtry, and by the grace of a Kyle Filipowski missed three-pointer, the Philadelphia 76ers have escaped the Utah Jazz. We're going to dive into exactly what went wrong, what went right, and a little bit more in the wrong category in that conversation for my liking in this game. But nonetheless, we're going to dive into the weeds of the Sixers versus Jazz matchup. Sam Oshtry, how are we doing, my friend? How was your experience watching that game?
Terrible. Like everybody's was watching that game. I mean, you're a true sicko if you watch that game, number one. And if you're a true sicko, if you're staying up with us, listening to us talk about that game.
Yeah.
We do appreciate you, and we love it and respect it. Two of the worst teams in the league just battling out. I mean, with the current iteration of the Sixers squad right now, one of, if not the worst team in the league, and a team trying to lose that's missing everybody, even though Keontae George is awesome. Big fan of his all season. It was just an ugly game, but the Sixers escaped in a weird way, an important game, which we can talk about a little bit, but in a weird way, an important game for some people's job securities, at least in the short term.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, for most of the way that game was trending, I did not feel great about that overall outlook right there. That I think most of that game I was watching, I was like, I think the Sixers are going to lose this game. The way it just hung around there forever, the third quarter, which, by the way, it is absolute insanity that we're still having these third quarter conversations, man, that they still can't find a way to get out of halftime and find a way to put somewhat of a productive quarter together. That in tonight's game in particular, they were outscored 35-29 by the Utah Jazz in the third. And frankly, that 29 is a pretty high mark for what they put forth in third quarters. They scored 11 points in last night's loss in the third quarter overall. What's the deal with those? And I know there's bigger fish to fry on this overall conversation for tonight, but is there a solution to these third quarter issues whatsoever?
If there was, they would have found it. I don't think there is. I mean, you try. I feel like this happens at all levels of basketball a lot, where it's like you come out of halftime and you're not playing well in the third, and you try all these different things, and I'm sure they've done all of them, and we don't really know. And there hasn't been. I feel like we haven't really heard as much as you would think we would have heard about some of the things they've tried about. Oh, maybe we'll do layup lines. You've seen NBA teams actually do layup lines to start or right at coming out of the halftime locker room. Certain teams that have awful third quarters. Not saying that works necessarily, because teams never do real layup lines, but teams have tried it just to try something. You've seen all types of teams do stuff, different approach in the locker room. That I'm sure, and I hope that they've tried all types of remedies. It just seems like for whatever reason they come out of the locker room sluggish.
Yeah, and for me, like, it boils down to one of two things, right? It's either the other team makes adjustments that the Sixers are not ready for, or it's purely a mentality thing. And I very much lean towards the second part of that, of them just not.
I think adjustments are really overrated. Halftime adjustments. It's most of the adjustments are coming in game.
Yes, I would agree with that. And like and beforehand, more so than anything, that you come into a game with a game plan, you execute that. I don't think that much changes at halftime. Sure, of course, over the ebbs and flows of a game, foul trouble, guys not playing well, things like that. Of course, you shift things up. But the reality is, I think any way that you boil this down, this comes down to, and this kind of circles back to what I think the overall point of tonight is these aren't X's and O's adjustments. These are look yourself in the mirror and play to your caliber of standard adjustments. And I don't think the Sixers have done that at a good enough level. And I know I'm coming out hot ranting about a victory, but the reality is, like, if the Sixers are a serious basketball team, if they want to consider themselves,
we are way past that, brother.
Yeah, fair. But like, these are the games that you have to step on a team's neck and assert yourself. The Utah Jazz are actively trying to lose basketball games. And for a Sixers team, that this was an important game. This was borderline a must-win from the Sixers' perspective. And I didn't feel at any point tonight like we have to win this, or we're the better team, or we're going to play to our level and they can't match us. I got none of that energy from the Sixers team tonight. Did you?
No, not at all. And you talked about we thought they were going to lose this game at some point. With around 3 minutes to go in the game, the Sixers are on a 3-1 break. They're down 4, and Quentin Grimes comes down and turns the ball over. A 3-on-1 break, a professional basketball team. 3-on-1 break. They couldn't convert into a bucket. It was Quentin Grimes' turnover, and that was around 3 minutes to go, down 4. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of the embodiment of the entire season, or really, I guess, the last few weeks or so. And it feels like they're going to lose this game again in embarrassing fashion. And, of course, they ended up overcoming that, closed the game on like a 10-2 run, something like that.
They
and
went the Jazz went
overcome
like
that. But
4 minutes without scoring in the fourth,
yeah,
which is the only reason they won that game. That was the only reason. And by the way, if Kyle Filipowski hits that three-pointer, which was as good of a look as you can hope for in that context in the NBA, we have probably not a very much different tone because I still feel incredibly aggravated after watching that game.
maybe not a different tone, but different conversations for sure.
For sure, absolutely.
Kyle Filipowski, that was his only 3 of the night, so I was comfortable with him shooting that, even though it was open. Even though Kyle Filipowski did not play well at all tonight, I do like his game. I'm
Sure.
pretty bullish on him as a player. Sixers shot 26% from 3 tonight. I mean, it's hard doing basketball games shooting 26%, and they still overcame that. It was an ugly, sluggish game. They were saying on the broadcast that was really 90s style, and in a lot of ways it was. It was just but it wasn't like it was great defense. It was just two awful offenses. And the Jazz went to this matchup zone for most of the game, and it was really the Sixers seemed puzzled by it for large stretches. They could not get downhill in a way they wanted to and get somewhat clean looks from 3. So that matchup zone was pretty creative and a good move by the Jazz that gave the Sixers some trouble.
Yeah, and I do, by the way, I think Will Hardy's a good coach. That I think the
Great
Jazz,
coach.
yeah, I think like when he gets the actual players, like this Jazz team is going to be a problem. Like next
Comes
year,
from the Popovich tree.
Yeah, 100% there. And when they get an AJ DeBanster or wherever the pick falls and they get their guy and they are on the, who knows, maybe he's going back to school for 4 years, according to him as of today. So we'll see. But the point being, they'll get their top pick for this year. They got Lauri Markkanen. They got Jaren Jackson Jr. This is going to be kind of a good team next year. Maybe not good, but they're going to be in the mix. And I think Will Hardy is going to be capable of maximizing that. I'm seeing not that much of that from the Sixers perspective. And we're kind of circling back to this Nick Nurse conversation. But to take it away from Nick Nurse, the moment to me that it settled in was like with like 6.5, 7 minutes to play. And I looked at this roster and I looked at the team on the floor for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it was Tyrese Maxey out there, who we spoke nothing but glowing things about, and deservingly so, that he's earned it with that. The other 4 guys on the court in that stage of this game, which is 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter of a close game, it was 39-year-old Kyle Lowry. He might even be older than that, if I'm not mistaken there. Then it was Tyrese Martin, Jabari Walker, and Dominic Barlow. Like, I'm sorry. I like all these guys in a vacuum here.
I mean, that's a Nick Nurse issue. What do you expect him to do? Who's he supposed to play?
No, you're right.
Justin Edwards.
I was circling this back to be a bigger picture conversation of like, and I understand this all ties to how much of your salary cap is committed to Joel Embiid and Paul George. And obviously we're seeing how the season is working out with it. But what I'm watching with 7 minutes left to play, with the game in the balance, with this being a neck and neck game, and the 5-man unit that you're rolling out there is Jabari Walker, Dominic Barlow, Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Martin, and Tyrese Maxey. Like, dude, that's just not good. Like, there's just not enough quality here. And we keep coming back to that. I mean, that's more of a Morey thing than a Nurse thing.
And they're down 4 starters, Sean. I don't know who you want them to put on the court alongside Tyrese Maxey. They're down 4 starters, and it's just Maxey out there on an island. So that's kind of what I expected. It was going to be a Kyle Lowry minutes type game. It was going to be campaign, who really didn't even play that much, but as much as I thought he would. But yeah, those type of guys, Justin Edwards, who we saw a lot last night too. What else did you expect? I mean, that's all they have to play. And that's why it was going to be such a closely contested game against maybe the worst team in the league, who's missing a lot of their best players too, because they just don't have anybody. 4 of their starters are out. There wasn't much more to say or do. The only thing I was really looking at was the effort, because we've seen this team quit a bunch and quit a bunch at home. And as you've noted multiple times, they're the only team in NBA history to lose 3 games in a season by more than 40 points. That has nothing to do with talent. That has nothing to do with schematic adjustments. That's effort. That's a desire to win versus a will to quit, I guess you'd call it. And the Sixers have shown that they're a team that will quit, and that's a reflection on the culture. That's a reflection on the coaching staff. So that's what I wanted to see tonight. I wanted to see effort. I wanted to see them play hard and play harder than last night, which they did. At the very least, it's not a good team they put out there because they don't have a lot of players right now because they're down 4 starters. But at least they showed more effort tonight.
But if that's your barometer, and I'm with you on the extent of I'm this is loser mentality. I'm wearing that on my chest as I say this, but I'm not as much grading this team currently on like the direct wins and losses or what the, whatever conversation you want to circle to it. There is a point to like, are you performing to the best of your possible abilities? Do you think they accomplished that tonight? Because I don't.
I mean, no, because I didn't think Maxey played well.
No,
and he had moments, but another inefficient shooting night. And this was a game where he is by far the best player on the floor. And I love Keontae George, and Keontae George is a bright future. I think he should be right in contention for most improved player this year. But Maxey is by far the best player on the floor. And there's too often, especially early in the game, he felt like passive. And it felt
Yeah.
like he wasn't trying to shoot a million times and create shots for himself as much as he was others. When it's like you don't want anyone else on this team shooting the ball right now, given the state of the roster. It just felt like you didn't feel him as much as you wanted to in a game where he is by far the best player and he had to assert his dominance to give them a chance. He was better down the stretch, I thought, but it wasn't Maxey's best game, but forgot the efficiency, not just because of that, because it didn't feel like he took it over in a way that you're a top 15, 20 player in the league. These are the games you have to take over.
Yeah, this should be a game where I can single-handedly look at Tyrese Maxey and be like, yep, he carried this team to a win. He absolutely took advantage of every, advantage that he had and maximized on that. I don't feel that was the case. And to list off his full stats overall, played 38 minutes tonight, poured in 25 points, 6 assists, 2 rebounds. He did have 3 blocks, shot 8 of 22 from the field, 2 of 10 from beyond the three-point arc. And the Maxey conversation is kind of fascinating to me, right? Because I do think there's portions of the Sixers fan base that are too hypercritical of him and, too he can do no wrong in their eyes with that conversation. I personally feel that I think the more that data that we have in front of us, I don't think he's probably the lead guy on like a winning basketball team. I do think he's an excellent number 2 with that. And that's like a tough distinction to have. It's also like me critiquing that after a victory over the Utah Jazz is probably not the place for this, but there are some big picture conversations that should be had with that. But to be fair,
I think he's a tier, just to respond to that, I think he's a tier below some of these guys people want him to be, which are the Cades of the world, the Jalen Brunsons of the world, and some of those other guards.
And I'm one of the guys that's thrown him in these conversations, so I got to wear that.
I know, and I think he's a tier below that, but at the same time, I feel bad for him.
Me too.
I mean, he's dealing with an impossible hand, and he's leading the NBA in minutes, leading the NBA in points because he has to, third in miles ran because he has to move around the court that much and has to play that much. He has to do everything to keep the Sixers squad out of the play-in right now. And so I feel he hasn't been efficient for we're on 6 weeks now. Even when Embiid's been there, the shots are easier, but he still hasn't been efficient. He's shooting like 33, 34% from 3 since the end of January. So it's a long stretch of real inefficient, not the most quality play from Maxey that we saw the first 3 months of the season. But I still feel bad for him. He's dealing with an impossible hand every single night. He doesn't know who's going to suit up for him. And he's been the only guy. I mean, VJ too, for the most part. He was out tonight, obviously. But those are the only 2 guys who have been consistently reliable since the start of the season. And VJ's a rookie. As great as he's been and exceed all of our expectations, you can't count on a rookie like that. So I don't think it's fair to make these grand proclamations about Tyrese Maxey right now, because of the hand he's dealt with, not just the lack of availability from some of his co-stars, but just the uncertainty every single night of who he's actually going to suit up with. I feel bad for him. And yeah, I don't think he's on Cade or Brunson or these guys' levels, but he's a tier below those. He's still a top 15, 20 player in the league.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we've seen Cade be on a brutal basketball team where he had no help. We've seen a lot of these guys. And by the way, if we're to zoom out of not even just this year, when you think about the trajectory of Tyrese Maxey, the things that he's lived through as far as the Ben Simmons holdout, the Doc Rivers keeping him chained to the bench, the way that his role has just drastically shifted on a year-by-year basis and him been asked to play such a vastly different role. And now they're basically looking at him as like, you're everything to us. You steer us home. You take every shot. You're the guy for this team. That's an impossible.
Forget the on-court stuff for a second. He's also the face of the franchise because he actually has this infectious energy and spirit and plays with joy. And he's someone who Sixers fans can get behind, as opposed to a Joel Embiid who can drag a lot of energy out of fans for long seasons. And he's the leader of the team. He's the guy who has to call Joel Embiid out, the MVP out, for being late. Like, he has to do, forget on the court, he has to do everything to represent this franchise, which has just been embarrassing for a decade at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough stretch, man. There's no way around it right here. I'm gonna try and swing a positive right here. We're gonna momentum shift. I want to shed a little bit of light on Jabari Walker right here.
He was a positive for sure.
Definitely a positive tonight. In Jabari Walker's 28 minutes of action, he poured in 22 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 4 of 7 from beyond the three-point arc. Also added 10 rebounds, a team high, 2 assists, and had a block of his own right there. Jabari Walker's been kind of an interesting character on this Sixers team. That he's obviously a guy that had the 2-way contract for the start of the year, earned his way up to a standard deal. I like the way that he plays physically. I do think he has a little bit of like dog mentality in him, which I think this team just needs as much of that as they can possibly get right now. It was nice to see him sort of show out a bit. And even like in the flow of offense, it felt like they were like shifting to him at a level that I hadn't really seen all season. So what did you see from Jabari Walker? And is this something that he can build off?
I think so. I mean, he's a really good player, and when you don't have it from Dominique Barlow or Trenton Watford,
Yeah.
in terms of the scoring load, you need that from Jabari Walker. I mean, he started the game 4-4 from 3.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, where did that come from? He can shoot, but 4-4 from 3. So that was impressive. I mean, it was a shot making clinic from him to start the game. Also grabbed 10 boards. He's a really good connector. He's constantly in the right spots, making the right plays, and a lot of times guys are rewarded with buckets from that. Either it's open threes or finishes around the rim. He was a good driver too. Got to the free throw line. I think 3 trips to the free throw line.
Yep.
So including that last one to seal, or that wasn't a trip to the free throw line, but he's the guy that got fouled.
Sure.
Who to seal the game there. So I was impressed with Jabari Walker. They needed every point from him tonight, and that you knew someone to win this game. Someone had to step up, other than the main guys, because most of those guys were out. It had to be a Dominic Barlow. It had to be, and Quentin Grimes was solid tonight too, for the most part. Well, you want more from him, but I just don't think he's that player. So he did what you would expect: 16 points, 7 for 12 from the field. Actually, 0 for 4 from 3, which was pretty disappointing. But other than those two guys,
to be honest, to interject there, I have a problem with him taking 12 shot attempts, man. Like, there's got to be more. Like, you have to.
I agree.
You if you're Mr. I want $30 million annually, if you're Mr. I think I'm this guy, these are your opportunities to prove that.
And that's the crazy part, is we saw it last year when everybody was out.
Yeah.
That's when Quentin Grimes was going crazy. He was playing his basketball at the end of last year, and when everybody was out. So it's like, this is an opportunity when everybody's out. You're not coming off the bench right now. You're in the starting lineup. You're an important figure. Why are you not more aggressive with your shot attempts? Like you were at the end of last season.
And we obviously have more season to get through right here. But if you're Quentin Grimes, or I guess I'll say if you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you entered this offseason with Quentin Grimes as an impending free agent, what kind of offer are you putting on his table right now? Because to be honest with you, Sam Oshtry, if Quentin Grimes is suiting up in a different jersey next year, I don't have much of a problem with that.
Neither do I. I mean, way less than what he asked for. It depends what this roster looks like. I mean, it's an impossible question right now, because like if Joel Embiid, and you're stripping it down, and Joel Embiid is out, and some of these other guys you're trying to get rid of, and just start over with Maxime VG Edgecombe, which, we can talk about this a little later, but if there's a new GM, that's certainly, or new president of basketball operations, that's certainly in consideration. Then it's like, what's the use of Quentin Grimes? You're not offering what he wants. I also don't think I think the market based on this year is really going to sour on Quentin Grimes, and him and his representation are going to have to end up asking for less than they initially wanted. So if you can get him for like a low cost deal, then I don't think he's some terrible player to have off the bench as a rotational guard.
Yeah, I mean, he's an NBA player. There's no doubt. Like, he's an absolute NBA player. He's a guy that can play rotational minutes, but that's kind of where the conversation ends to me. Like, I don't see the ceiling of this dude, this microwave scorer off the bench, at least consistently. Like, the side effect of this Jared McCain trade was very much a direct gamble, and we believe in Quentin Grimes, that we think this guy is ready, that he's going to be a huge part of this team. Like, to compare,
I don't really think.
How so not? How so?
Because he was ahead of Quentin Grimes, or Quentin Grimes was ahead of him in the rotation anyway.
Sure,
like,
but
and was always going to be, even if McCain was on the roster.
But fast forwarding to next year, we're talking about Quentin Grimes is going to be an impending free agent. I at least know I have Jared McCain on a cost controlled contract on his rookie deal for what he's going to be as a basketball player. Quentin Grimes is going to do that's going to test the market, try and maximize whatever he's got. And frankly, even 1-for-1, I'm not certain right now that Quentin Grimes is better than Jared McCain straight up.
Well, Nick Nurse certainly thought he was.
Sure.
Not that he has the best track record. Yeah, I mean, this situation where all these guys are out and you need creation, scoring, a lot of microwave scoring in a lot of ways, which what Jared McCain can be great at. Yeah, like tonight, I would have much rather had a Jared McCain alongside Tyrese Maxey and Quentin Grimes. Based on what we saw the first part of the season, like Quentin Grimes was the better player for the Sixers. But again, I can't evaluate that, because that's how Nick Nurse used them, and that's how the Sixers wanted to use him, and coming off an injury too. So it's hard to really evaluate.
Yeah, and I will have some lengthy words coming on Crossing Broad for that entire saga. So stay tuned for that. Probably dropping tomorrow.
What's the headline?
It's a working title right now, because I had
what's the thesis?
The thesis is the Jared McCain's success in Oklahoma City is an indictment on the entire Philadelphia 76ers organization. And that means Daryl Morey, that means Nick Nurse. It's honestly primarily a Nick Nurse thing
Yeah.
for just like the job of a head coach, I'll continue to circle back to, is to maximize the talent of the players that you do have. He absolutely has failed in that regard on a lot of players on this team. And I know we've had this talk quite a bit of like, if you're to tell me this season, you get this version of Joel Embiid, you get this version of Tyrese Maxey, you get this version of VJ Edgecombe, and this is what the team looks like, that to me is not good enough. And I know that's not the conversation we're having today because this was a shorthanded team. There was no Kelly Oubre. Paul George still suspended. Joel Embiid still out with his oblique issue. Like there's a lot of factors for tonight specifically, but it still feels to me kind of like a representation of what this entire year has been of this team not quite living up to what the expectation or what the realistic standard for them should be.
I think that's a fair assessment, no doubt. I mean, it's an indictment on everybody. This entire season has been, and I know people are critical. I mean, this is a much deeper conversation. I know people are critical of Nick Nurse, and I don't think he's the Sixers coach next year. I would say that with great certainty, but I think your culture is also a reflection of your best player, and I think the Sixers culture is what it is for the last half a decade over that because of their best player. And people people love Joel Embiid, so people don't want to cast those aspersions onto him. But I think it's true. I just think your culture is a reflection of your best player, and the best coaches like Ime Udoka can come in and maybe overcome that, and Joe Mazzulla and some of these other guys. Yeah. Maybe the best coaches can do that. There's not a lot that can, and the Sixers, Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse, whoever it is, but those guys haven't been able to, and they can unlock Embiid's potential offensively and defensively if he's healthy. But that doesn't mean it's going to translate to championship level basketball, which we haven't seen from the Sixers in ever.
1983.
I mean, not my lifetime. Yeah, I was trying to say, not my lifetime. So I don't think those things translate necessarily, and I think that's a reflection of the best player. And when you don't have a great coach to overcome a best player's faults, and that's not about his work ethic. He's an unbelievable hard worker. That's true. I don't like when people say that, but there's a seriousness, a maturity that comes from being a really great player to being this all-time great champion. And he doesn't have that. I mean, it's just like there's nothing more obvious. You can say the reports about everybody's heard about when he comes in, what he eats, all this stuff, but that's all hearsay that we all hear. What we know for a fact is that after winning an MVP, he was consistently showing up late and had to be called out by another player on the team. That tells you everything you need to know. And that it's your best player sets your culture.
All right. So I got two directions I need to go with this. For now, I'm keeping it on Joel Embiid. The thing that I'll always be sympathetic to on the Joel Embiid conversation is it should not be the case where your franchise player is everything to an organization in the way that he has. What I mean by that is he's lived through what I mean by that is he's lived through 3 general managers. This is his 3rd head coach. He's had 150 plus teammates to this point. He's probably over 200 to this point. Like Joel has had to be the stability for the Sixers organization in a way that an organization is supposed to be for a player. Like that's just to me the way that it is like we're talking about a general manager talking crap about him on burner accounts and speaking all that. Like the things that he's lived through is just not a normal trajectory for an NBA player. So the point that you make is not wrong in the overall standpoint of like he does have to do a better job setting the culture with all this. I also am always going to be sympathetic to the standpoint of when we look at today's modern NBA and how quickly guys demand out and how quickly star players get whatever they want, play for whatever team they want, that I've seen Joel Embiid just stick it out and be the best possible version of him as a basketball player because he has to this point. He's still an all-time great talent, no matter how you cut it in that conversation here. But I still hear what you're saying as far as like the standard, but I'll allow you a chance to reply to that.
I mean, to counter just to your original statement, every all-time great player or talent, I guess if we want to say, is everything to the organization. I mean, Giannis has been everything. Giannis has been everything to the Bucks. And I'll answer the second part in a second, but because I know what you're going to ask. But Giannis has been everything to the Bucks. Nikola Jokic has been everything to the Nuggets, and those guys haven't dealt with the dysfunction that Joel Embiid has. I can't deny that for a second. But it's not like their front offices have been rock solid with some of their roster moves. Everybody has mistakes, and that's probably why Giannis is not going to be a Buck, and Jokic only has 1 title so far, and all these things. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect. Of course, Embiid has dealt with more dysfunction than anybody. But I think if you had more stability, and he's had the stability as a player, but if you had more stability from a culture perspective, the Sixers would have done a better job overcoming all of that dysfunction, which a lot of it was self-inflicted. So that's where I'm at with that conversation, unless you have another question that you were going to pose.
Well, I'll flip it to the other second point I wanted to make is because this isn't a night for Joel Embiid, that he did not play. It was not. There's a lot of big picture conversation we got to dig into. To bring this back to Tyrese Maxey, like that is what Maxey's been credited for, that he's been the standard setter. He's been the guy that is like the cultural leader, the guy that is the face of the organization. I don't quite, I don't see it rubbing off on guys the way that like it should. It just straight up should. Like it feels like a far too often occasion. And I think tonight fits this category where the team just doesn't get up. The team just isn't fired up. It doesn't have this spirit. And they did at the start of the season. Like I think where I'm most frustrated is it feels like it's deteriorated the way this season has gone. That there's been less and less of that about that. So why is that message that is being presented seemingly by Tyrese Maxey not applying to the rest of this organization?
I don't have an answer. Tyrese Maxey is the culture setter that you want and the guy you want to be the face of your franchise, but he's not as good as certainly not as Joel Embiid and never will be. And a lot of these other guys, like he's not a top 10 player in the league or top 5, what do we call it, where these guys are everything to the organization and would be considered untouchable. And he's just not in that tier. So maybe that has something to do with it. I also think, it can only rub off so much. Like there's only so much you can do. And he's also young. Like I think he's really taken on the leadership role over the last couple of years, but that's still a new thing for him and something he's developing and I'm sure learning and getting better at. But that's not like 2 years ago, he wasn't considered the leader of this team. But to bring it back to something we were talking about earlier is this was the lesson from last year where they were terrible. But even obviously we know the season ended, but they were terrible to start the season. And a big part of that was because of their attitude every single day where they didn't know if Embiid was going to play, if Paul George was going to play. They were dealing with guys in and out of the lineup. And that trickled down to having the demeanor that they had in a lot of games where things just got ugly. And that was the lesson they all talked about. Like Nick Nurse talked about it. He had to do a better job with that. All these guys. And it just feels like they got off to a great hot start to the season. It was like good vibes. VJ Edgecombe, this backcourt's incredible. And Embiid steps in and he's playing MVP level basketball. You're right in there in the Eastern Conference playoff mix. And now it feels like you're dealing with all that stuff again. Paul George out for an extended period of time and Embiid in the lineup, out of lineup, in the lineup. I can't even keep the sentence up. And all these things. And now you're back to, okay, our demeanor is getting so much worse when these guys are in and out of the lineup. And that's been pretty obvious. Obviously 4 or 3 40-point blowout losses at home. And tonight was a win over a worst team in the league trying to tank.
Barely.
So yeah, barely win. It wasn't a great showing. So that's what I feel like the Sixers have really struggled with recently and that's something they said they all learned from last year, is being able to overcome the uncertainty of lineup decisions every single day.
Do you agree with me from the standpoint of that shifted as this season has gone on?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it was all good vibes start the season, then Embiid comes back, and then now it's definitely shifted because they're dealing with it now. It feels like this is the first time over the last month or so where they're really dealing with it, right?
Yeah, and I do think like a part of that is like the more that Joel has been available and been himself, like looking at a better version of himself than I think any of us could have realistically expected. Like they became increasingly dependent on the guy who's clearly the best player on your team. And when that guy's then taken away, like all of a sudden it's like you're back to square one, but sort of beyond the 8 ball in that conversation there. So, I mean, this is a really tough like needle that they're attempting to thread right here to try and make this work with all the factors that we are talking about.
And that's why I've told you many times, getting Joel Embiid off the team is addition by subtraction.
Well, that's not
you
true.
Just eliminate that whole thing where he plays and he's playing amazing and you're going to be really good because he's that great of a player, but the extended absences are coming and your team can't overcome his absence after playing with him for a month stretch and relying on him for a month.
You always lose me on this point here because it's just factually inaccurate that this is an addition by subtraction to get rid of Joel Embiid because it's not.
Over the long haul, it is. It is. I mean, obviously, when he's on the floor, they're way better. That's
Right.
obvious.
Well, that's not like a throwaway point right there. That's kind of
no, because are they better over an entire season that you know he's going to miss 70%, 60% of the season? And are you better in your long-term future when that's just how you're approaching every single season? No, it's addition by subtraction for the long-term future.
But it's not because if you have Joel Embiid, you're guaranteed a playoff spot. You're guaranteed a.
No, you're not. What happened last year?
I mean, that's the one season out of his career which he played 19 games.
Yeah, but he's only getting older and he's only getting more injured. I mean, how many games has he played over the last 3 seasons? None, practically, right? So what's the percentage? I actually should look it up. 30% over the last 3 seasons. It's not like last season.
More than that.
Last season was obviously really ugly.
An outlier. Last season was an outlier in his overall.
He missed the majority of the season the year before.
Played 39 games.
Yeah. So he missed the majority of the season the year before, and he's going to miss the majority of the season this year. So it's not an outlier when he played 10, 15 games last year. It maybe compared to what was it, 4 years ago? Yeah, it's an outlier. But this is the trend that Embiid is going on, where he's just not going to be playing more than 35 to 40 games. That's a great season, by the way, 35 to 40 games.
And he's going to get that this year. He's going to play 35, 40 games. He is. I think he's at 31 right now.
Yeah, so he'll probably play around 40. I mean, that's being hopeful. Who knows? Who knows? Reevaluate right. After 3 days, and then he's out Saturday. And who knows?
So I'll swing this to this big picture conversation because I don't want to get too bogged down in the Joel Embiid future. We're in the mix. We're in the hunt for this season right now. We're, like it or not, this season continues on.
It was actually a huge win, not just for all the things we've talked about for the standings. I mean, they're only half a game ahead of the Magic and the Heat coming into tonight, so that would have been. They would have been tied, essentially. Yeah. Actually, no, those 2 teams didn't play tonight. But so now they're a game ahead of both those teams. But both those teams are coming.
For sure. To fast forward to, I think it's 10 more games where Paul George is suspended, or maybe a couple more than that. 12, I think it might be. I guess my question is here. When we get to, there's 10 games remaining in the regular season. Paul George is eligible to return from suspension. We hope Joel Embiid is healthy. What is your pep talk in the locker room or to the fan base right here of this team can figure out? Is there any chance that they can find a way to look like a team that could remotely make some postseason noise?
Did you see Aaron Judge's pep talk?
Yes.
I think my pep talk to any Sixer fan who has that type of belief and optimism, it would be the same thing, where it would be that unmotivational, I think I would say. And I would want to do the opposite of running through a brick wall after listening to a pep talk about how the Sixers can somehow make this miraculous run. Just how I was so uninspired about life after listening to Aaron Judge's pep talk in that USA locker room. I mean, in all seriousness, their talent is really good. Like when they're all healthy, and they're not going to be healthy, and we know this. But if they all are healthy, and Embiid's playing at a great level, and Paul George back from suspension, and VJ Edgecombe is back, and Kelly Oubre, they've all had individually, when they've been at their best, really good seasons. And so reps and chemistry and all that stuff matters, and they don't have that because they haven't played enough together. That starting 5. But that starting 5, just from a pure talent perspective, I really believe can rival any in the East. And I mean that. I think the Knicks are number 1 in terms of just talent from their top 5. And I think the Sixers are right there at 2. And that's VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. And so that's where you can talk yourself into, if you're on some crazy pills, talk yourself into a miraculous run, because the talent from that group, when fully healthy, is there.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. It's a tough sell on all this conversation. And I found myself tonight, it's embarrassing because this is a shorthanded Sixers team playing a Jazz team that's actively trying to lose games. And I found myself having big picture conversations in my head watching this game. So it's tough in that regard. I guess to try and make it about this specific game once again, do you have any thoughts on the Adembona and Trendon Watford in the starting 5?
It was better than Andre Drummond. I mean, this was the first good thing Nick Nurse has done in forever. Andre Drummond has been terrible for 2 months now. And he's been getting bullied and it's not like the Jazz are some elite offensive rebounding team or have any great centers without Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler and then all their guys, but the Andre Drummond minutes just had to decrease, and he only played 13 minutes tonight. You know, he missed that three. I think it was at the end of the third quarter. He looked. He looked so disheveled after that. Did you notice that? He was like this, like he was in his jersey, like all this.
He also like just straight up kicked the dude on the screen tonight. Like, like I
Oh,
don't know
wait,
what
so
that
I was at the Spurs game last night, and guys grab off the ball so much in the league these days. But he was trying to be so physical with Wemby off the ball, pushing him down, grabbing both of his arms. And the refs were like there talking to him, but not calling the foul, like saying hands off, whatever. He was trying to be so physical. It didn't matter. And credit to Wemby, who just has incredible poise and stature. And he was pushed down. He never gets rattled in those moments, never fights back, just does his talking on the court. But it was interesting how much Andre Drummond was just trying to and he picked up a few fouls early, but trying to just be super physical off the ball. To your point about tonight, all this to say that Andre Drummond should not be playing more than 15 minutes tonight. He's been really bad for the last 2 months. So more Dembona minutes was finally, I mean, it's been the answer, but it's finally what we saw tonight. That was the first good thing Nick Nurse has done in a long time.
Yeah, and speaking of guys that probably should not be playing significant minutes, we got some Kyle Lowry action tonight, man.
He got a bucket.
Yeah, he did. He was foul baiting, got to the free throw line. It felt like Kyle Lowry all over again. So he played 9 minutes of action, had 2 points, 2 rebounds. He did not have a bucket. It was just the 2 free throws right there. The assist that he did have. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was just thinking about it as you were speaking. You know, he's a case study in veterans don't actually at the tail end of their career who sit on the bench don't actually impact the culture at all. I think that's pretty obvious over the last couple seasons, as with Kyle Lowry as a Sixer, that it has not impacted the culture one bit. And look, I'm sure he's been a great veteran presence, or he was for Jared McCain, and just a mentor for guys like VG Edgecombe and Maxey and these guys. But in terms of like, oh yeah, this is going to change the culture and our locker room demeanor, he's a pretty good case study of doesn't actually work when you just sign these veterans who have been around the league in their last couple of years to a minimum who are never going to play.
I do think there's like some value in that in the right team in the right context right there. I think for this specific Sixers team, when you know the limitations that come with when you have Joel Embiid and Paul George, to just sacrifice a roster spot to a guy like that you have no intention of playing except for like when you have to, like tonight, it's like that's just not quite the proper way to build out a roster. I think the Udonis Haslem role has done more damage to that specific outlook than anyone ever. That I think there's gonna like Lowry's not gonna be the last guy. I watched DeAndre Jordan start a game against this Sixers team not too long ago after he was an absolute.
I don't know. It's a common thing. That's why I said, like, does it really work? Probably not.
Yeah. I don't know, man. This is I can't believe how like angry I feel because I know they won this game, but I just feel like irritated after watching that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It was disgusting. I'm irritated that it was on my main screen and Knicks Thunder was on a separate screen, and that was one of the games of the season. It looked like, but I wasn't locked in on it. Let's just wrap up with kind of going over what their schedule looks like the rest of the way. So they're on the road with Atlanta and Cleveland. Then they have Memphis, Detroit. I mean, they don't have an easy schedule the rest of the season.
No.
And you look at it, they played Detroit twice. They'll play the
Both
Spurs
losses.
one more time. They'll play the Thunder. They'll play the Hornets, one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah.
They play the Wolves. They play the Rockets. Of course, I said Cleveland. They play on Monday, and they play the Hawks, who they've lost to already three times, I believe, this year. And they play the Nuggets. I mean, they play some of the best. They still obviously have like the Nets and the Wizards and some the Bulls, some of these Pacers, some of these games that should be easy wins, even though they never are for the Sixers. But they play some of the best teams in the league down the stretch of the schedule. And then Paul George is supposed to come back March 25th, I believe.
10 games remaining, I know.
Yeah, so there's some winnable games down the stretch, but this is going to be a really interesting play-in race because they're only, like I said, they're only one game ahead of the Magic and Heat, who are tied for 7th right now, as the Sixers are in 6th. And it really comes down to, will Joel Embiid play? I have to update the tracker that I have in my notes of their record with and without Joel Embiid, but it's really bad with him or without him and really good with them. So it just comes down to, will he play? And then they can win some of these games and make a run to kind of avoid being in that play-in picture.
Can I ask, do you have those notes handy right now, the record with Joel Embiid?
I do. I just got to add to it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I
We can
believe 20 and
filibuster here.
I believe 20 and 12 is the number if my calculations are correct on that. So I just wanted to make that on record as we got this addition by subtraction comment from my guy Sam Oshtry right here.
Well, so I didn't add it last night. So they lost last night. So they're 21-11 with Joel Embiid this year,
Okay.
and then 13-17 without him.
Okay. I don't think that is addition by subtraction. If my
It is for the long run, because that's the thing. That 13-17 without him is a reflection on him and how much they rely on him and how unavailable he is. So that's why it is for the long run.
I mean, do you think if we watched the Nuggets win without Nikola Jokic? Like,
They have a different culture over there, and they have a better team surrounding. Actually, yeah, I mean, you could say they have a better team surrounding Jokic.
I don't know. It's an interesting thought. We're going to have to dig deeper into that in another day, another time right here. Let's rest easy on tonight of they managed to squeeze by the
You
Utah
said some
Jazz.
big picture Sixers talk for like 40 minutes.
We did. And that's my fault. I steered the ship in this direction here.
There's nothing interesting to talk about from that game.
That's kind of where I got to as well. As I found myself watching this game feeling big picture conversations of like, this is what we're looking at. This is what the team is. This is what the outlook is from here. So I was glad to dive into that. But do you have any final takeaways for tonight's game specifically?
I don't think so. Keontae George, every time I watch him, I come away more impressed.
Player.
He's incredible. You talk about the Jazz's future and how they are going into win now mode. And of course, it's about Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler, assuming he signs there in free agency when he comes back from injury. And Ace Bailey's kind of a part of Keontae Jr.'s evolution as a player. Yeah. And like I said, he should be in the mix for most improved player this year. That's where you're really comfortable as a Jazz front office, that you don't have picks beyond this year. 2026 draft is really important for them, and they don't have their pick after that. So that's why it's super important that Keontae George has developed into the player they has, and they can feel comfortable going all in, not all in, but going into win now mode by acquiring Jaren Jackson, tanking the rest of this season to get one of those top picks, and then hopefully they do for their sake, and then you feel really good about this team's future. But Keontae George is as part of this future as anybody else.
Yeah, and he's earned that this year. Like, I do not think he was solidified on that list coming into the season. No. He's just played himself into it. So that is a huge credit to Keontae George right now. Shout out to him. But I do think that is one of the more positive takeaways of these teams that are just playing in like the bottom feeders of the NBA is you get these like guys that just outperform what any legitimate expectations are. Like, he's a night and day different player than he was even last year. And that's a huge credit to Keontae George right there. So shout out to him. Shout out to this Utah Jazz team. I'll leave on a little bit of a positive note.
Some numbers behind that. Most improved player. He was averaging 16.8 last year, averaging 24 per game this year, shooting 39% from the field last year, 46% this year. Much more efficient player, better from three, getting to the free throw line more, shooting nearly 90% from the line. So, I mean, all across the board, assists are up. Across the board, he's just been remarkably better. Yeah,
he looks more athletic to me too. Like there's a little bit more like wiggle to him and juice to him than I think I remember being the case with Keontae. So shout out to him. To leave on a positive note here, we know this is the last game that Joel Embiid has been ruled out for, that he will be reevaluated with this oblique strain that he is obviously dealing with. That changes the trajectory for the Sixers team in a massive way. Hopefully we have hit rock bottom on the season. I hope that this past week has been rock bottom for the Sixers team, but boy, they do got to scrap themselves out of it a little bit.
It would be irresponsible for us to just not mention the fact that he's still dealing with right knee management and knee stuff. It's like, the oblique injury, evaluating 3 days. Hopefully he's fine off that. He's still dealing with other stuff that has kept him out for a long stretch of the season. So we don't know, but there's nothing to be hopeful about. That's for sure.
Well, we don't know if Joel Embiid is going to be available, but what we do know is myself, Sean, Barnard, and Sam Oshtry are going to continue holding things down right here on the Sixers Wrap-Up Show. So appreciate all the sickos that have joined with us tonight after a frustrating victory over the Utah Jazz. Make sure you are smashing that subscribe button on the Gambler Gang YouTube, following me and Sean Brace and Sam Oshtry on Twitter as well. Still streaming from Brace's Twitter, even though he did not make. I was hoping for a Brace cameo here. Did not end up popping in, but
he had other priorities tonight.
Yeah. Any final words from you, Sam?
That's it.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you guys for rocking with us. Once again, make sure you're hitting that follow button, subscribing wherever you're listening at. Appreciate you guys for continuing. We'll be back on Saturday night as this Sixers team will be back in action, and hopefully with Joel Embiid, a little bit of a different tune. But appreciate you guys one more time. We'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.